Wendy Stephenson, and I'm working with an organisation called the Converging World. And actually it started out as an us community, in a way, because of how it started. So essentially what we do is we invest in renewable energy in India. And that seems a very long way from the community of Bristol. But it actually started in Magna, just over the hill, with the Go Zero project there. And fabulous project where people were talking about how do we reduce waste to zero, how do we reduce carbon emissions to zero. And there was a carbon offsetting company that came and said, you know, it'd be way more cost effective if you actually, you know, put light bulbs into townships in South Africa or somewhere like that, and it'll be much more cost effective in terms of reducing climate change. And some people said, really? We want to help our community here. And not only that, with the rate at which India and China are developing, what use is it us doing anything, really? So with that, most people went home, but a few people got together and said, well, why don't we try and meet an Indian or Chinese community that we can work together on climate change? And that was it. That was the start of it. And that was the us community bit, if you like. And serendipity had it, not long after the tsunami. A filmmaker was going there and to India to film. And they said, I'll put you in touch. And then there was a trip. And then we found it was the windiest place in India. It was John Pontin, actually, that went out there and said, I've got an idea, or we've got an idea. Let's invest in renewable energy there, leapfrog the developments that we've had. There's a lot of carbon, a lot of potential to build more coal-fired power stations. There's lots of people still off-grid. So let's invest, use money from here, invest in renewable energy there, and use the profit for social and environmental initiatives. And so that's what we do. And 10 years later, we've put in 3 wind farms, and we use the profit for social and environmental initiatives. And we're particularly focusing on reforestation. And it's bottom up, partly because of the CO2 sequestration, but also because of the value that forests bring in every other way. It's not just about CO2 removal from the atmosphere, but it's also about the well-being, it's about livelihoods, it's about local water management, biodiversity, and the list goes on. And it's the most cost-effective way to remove CO2 from the atmosphere. I think we sometimes get a bit distracted by all this technology and green bling and more policy papers telling us things we've already known for the last 40 years. We could just plant more trees. And yes. And actually, when you look at it, so even putting renewable energy in India, we know we can put in a megawatt there, which is half or a third of the price per megawatt it is here, and we avoid twice as much CO2 emissions. So I don't want to see it as, we can sometimes get very parochial about this, but as a globe, it doesn't matter where that ton of CO2 is emitted, it's going to have the same effect anywhere. So yes, we've got to do it here, we've got to start here, but I think we shouldn't be put off by something that is just out of sight. So that's what we do at the Converging World.